Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
I want to welcome you back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back. I'm going to do a little pivot today, and I'm not going to talk anything about COVID or response to COVID or any of those things. I'd like to kind of get back talking about some wealth concepts. I think it's important for us to do that, especially during this time. I think we've kind of most of us have put the things in place we need to deal with that. There's only so much we can do. And while there's a lot of active response, I get that. Financially, there's only so much we can do. So I want to talk today about really, truly incremental building of wealth. And it's not a new theory. I'm going to maybe talk about a way to do it that you've never done before. But we understand that the power of compound interest. We understand the power of dollar cost averaging. Most of you do. If you don't, then you can do a quick Google search and you'll find all the information you want on dollar cost averaging. But the point is this: somebody asked me, and by the way, the person who I had the conversation with this morning knows who I'm talking about because they listen to this podcast every week. But they asked me, what did you do this morning? I said, well, I was doing my transfers. And they said, what do you mean your transfers? And I said, well, I move money every day. And it was this concept of what do you mean you move money every day? And I said, well, I move money every single day. Every single morning I move money. So kind of thinking about that concept, what do you mean you move money every single day? And it goes back to this concept of wealth, but I want to talk about it in some kind of different ways to do that. And what I mean is, yes, I have different accounts, and depending on what my expenses are, and if you've read Financial Evolution, you'll also see a lot of part of this. But I want to kind of think about this energy. And by the way, I want to say something kind of even to start off this podcast. It's something important to think about. My career, I've been lucky to see people in every financial position possible. And I've seen it pretty much every age group. I remember a gentleman that was a dentist in his 80s who was struggling financially, who was like, I want to start saving. And I've seen people in their 80s that are tremendously successful. I've seen people in their 30s that are out of debt and tremendously successful. I've really seen the entire gamut. And the biggest thing that hinders people from improving their wealth is the same thing that hinders people from improving their dental health, is they're embarrassed. And when it comes down to wealth and health, there's this embarrassment of I should be in a different position, or I should have done things different. And I should, right? They say they should all over themselves, right? I should have been doing this. I should have been doing that. And if I had been saving when I always show the compound interest thing. And they say, well, if you started in your 20s, well, if you're in your 50s, that just looks really depressing to you, right? You can't go back 20 years. So what ends up happening inevitably is somebody along the line asks a financial advisor for help and says, hey, I need to invest. And then the financial advisor comes back and says, well, you need to give me $8,000 a month if you ever want to retire, which scares the world out of you. And you say, well, I can never do that, which only depresses you more. And then you feel like, well, it starts this cycle of I'm not where I want to be financially. And the mountain to get there is so darn high that it's like, how do I even start climbing it? And if that's you, I'm going to tell you today's the day. And today's the day you start climbing that mountain. But there's this mistake that gets made, and it's I've talked about the compound effect so many times on this podcast, but it's like this idea that I need to start moving aside $7,000 a month and these types of things. And by the way, maybe you can do that, and maybe you need to move more. Everyone's in a different financial position. And by the way, don't tune out if you're somebody who has a lot of accumulation, because I'll still never forget the story. This guy walked up to me at a convention one time and he says, I have X many locations and I have no debt and I have this much money in the bank, and what are you going to show me? And by the way, he approached me. I didn't approach him. And he was kind of challenging me. And then I did some math for him and showed him how much money he was losing by not understanding mathematics. So it doesn't really matter where you are. This conversation's for you. And I want you to think about that energy I was just talking about, that negative energy. And I want to hang there for a minute, because what ends up happening is that there's this negative energy that hangs with us. And what happens is we buy something and we have negative energy. I shouldn't be buying this. We shouldn't be going on vacation. We shouldn't be staying here. I feel guilty about buying anything. But there's like this guilt associated with any purchase. And by the way, the financial industry has done an amazing job making you feel very guilty about every purchase as well. Just remember, there's a little bit of propaganda that goes along with that. And so there's this constant energy that hangs over our head all day long, and it never truly leaves. And if you really admit it to yourself and become vulnerable, you'll admit that I'm right, that there's always this kind of energy that hangs over your head, feeling of some form of inadequacy around planning. And what I like to do is use that energy and turn it from a negative energy into a positive energy. I mean, energy can be transferred and it can be moved. And so by transferring money every day, waking up and then looking at my money and then being able to transfer money, whether that be, one of the ways I pay off the average client's home in 3 years. Okay. How do you do that, Eric? I mean, how do you pay off all this massive debt? We just do it piece by piece. I mean, it's not making a $50,000 payment, although sometimes that does happen. But oftentimes what ends up happening, it's this incremental daily move. That if you just increment, by the way, you know how many days of the month that Amex will take your money? Every single day. They'll be more than glad to take it. And so what happens is when we wake up, and I want you to think about this process. So you wake up, and you look at your business accounts, and you, by the way, going back to some of this is like, now you'll see how concepts compound on each other, because you get what you measure. You get what you measure. You get what you measure. If all of a sudden you look at your checking account at your business, and you look at your savings, and you look at your tax account, you better have a tax account, and you look at your debt, and you look at all these things, and you look at them, and then you start looking at your account, and let's just say that you only need $30,000 in your business account, but you have $42,000. That means you have $12,000 to move somewhere. Now, many people just sit with that money in their account. It's a false illusion of safety because they're carrying a tremendous amount of stress with them at all times. But that $12,000 isn't being utilized at any given point. And while that's outside the scope of this podcast to really get into what the opportunity cost of that money is, I would tell you that we constantly need to be moving money and paying down debt, and we constantly need to be accumulating. Once you've made a commitment, so let me get it on the personal side. Most people are going to go on vacation at some point this year. Where is that money going to come from? And have you created an account called vacation? And if not, where does that money come from? It comes from somewhere you had not anticipated it coming from. So then basically you're going to put it on a credit card, or you're going to pull out from savings. Either way, you spent the money along the way that you would have used for your vacation. Had you just put aside $100 here or $40 there, you would have found that you woke up with $3,000-$4,000. And when you went on vacation, you've been on vacation with no guilt. And so what ends up happening is this energy by waking up and actually moving money, what ends up happening is, let's say I did it on the personal side. I woke up and I look at my checking account, and I'm just making up some numbers here. Everyone's in a different financial position, but let me just use some numbers that make sense. So all of a sudden I look at, and this month I've paid my mortgage, I've paid maybe you have a car note, I've paid my credit card, whatever bills that are due, utilities, those types of things, maybe it's children's education. And you look over and you got $3,000 still sitting in the account. Why is it sitting there? See, by putting that money aside into future expenses, what will happen is, now all of a sudden, let's just say that I pay down some credit cards, I move that over to pay down some credit cards. I put some in my vacation fund, maybe I put some in my Christmas fund. And let's say I've allocated that money and I still have $500 left. And I just take that $500 and I put that into a fun account. Like, I'm just going to blow that. Do I feel okay about that $500 and blowing it? Well, I might make a different decision because I'm measuring, right? By measuring, I might make a different decision because I'm like, well, hold on, that $500 could be used to pay down something. And so I might use that money to pay down something, but I might just say, hey, look, I'm going to go buy that pair of sunglasses that I've been wanting to buy, or that, golf driver, or whatever it is. But here's the cool part about that. You walk into that purchase with a positive energy, because what people do is they don't pay attention to it, but once a month. They pay attention to it once a month, maybe twice a month. And what happens is they make purchases and they don't even look at what the balances are. They don't look at the balances on their personal side or the business side. And their personal credit card gets up to $10,000 and their business credit card gets up to $40,000. And they never paid attention to any of it. And then they wake up wondering why they're broke and wondering why they're stressed out and wondering why they can't seem to get ahead. And so this idea of if you looked at it's like one of the things, I read this book one time and it was talking about how do you lose weight? It was a guaranteed way to lose weight. All you got to do is get a step on the scale every morning. If you step on the scale every morning, all of a sudden, let's just say you wanted to be at 160 and you went to 162. You'd say, I think I'm going to eat a little better today. And then all of a sudden you get on the next day and it says 161. And it reinforced that habit. You go, hey, whatever I did yesterday, it worked. And then it comes back down to 160 and you feel pretty good. And so maybe you start eating that way. Versus if you don't look at the scale. Let's just say that month you don't look at the scale. So you don't look at it for a month till the end of the month. And all of a sudden you get on that scale and it says 168. Now you go, oh, crap. Right? And now you've got this mountain to climb. Versus if you had just looked at it every day, you would have made different decisions daily. And that's my point. See, even when you were eating that lunch that was fatty and whatever, you had guilt about it, didn't you? Of course you did. But if you had gotten to, let's say you want to be at 160 and you hit 158, right? Just because you were watching what you did. Now all of a sudden when you eat that meal, how would you feel about eating that Taco Bell or whatever? You'd probably feel okay about it, right? Why? Because you've already put the disciplines in place to make sure you're on track from where you want to be from a health standpoint. So you can eat that without any guilt. It's the same thing with money. It's the exact same thing with money. It's that if you're looking at it every single day, and then when you start getting ahead, you can make decisions. You can make decisions and feel good about those decisions and not feel this negative energy. Now, I want to parlay this into the really good part. Now, the really good part about this is, especially as a dental practitioner, when you look at this every single day, you go, all of a sudden you move money into accounts. Maybe you pay down your mortgage some today. You pay down your credit card. You put some in your investment account. You put some in your vacation account. You move money around, and you did this on your business too. Maybe you move some into paying for a new sterilization unit and X, Y, and Z. And you put this around, and all of a sudden you wake up and you go, and you feel good, and you go, man, what happened if I had an extra $5,000 in there, an extra $10,000? And then now you go to work, and instead of having this, like, I picture this Linus, like, dirt cloud following you all day long. Instead of having that, you wake up excited. You're like, man, let's get to work. And now, right, you ever seen a salesperson who's desperate? You ever seen that person who just needs the sale? They smell, don't they? And so what ends up happening is when you haven't looked at your numbers, when you haven't looked at the math, you walk in there and you stink of it because you need the money and you don't even know how much you need. Versus when you freed up and you go, I don't need the money. I've paid down my investment account today. I put money in my investment account. I've paid down credit cards. I've put money aside. You walk in like, I don't even need this case. If it doesn't close, I'm still great. I'm still in a great position. And so what ends up happening is you walk around with a reduction in stress, an increase in mental energy, and that mental energy, instead of using that mental energy for being stressed the hell out and being unhappy, you use that mental energy, that same exact energy now is not being consumed from the negative, it's being pushed into the positive, which it went from scarcity to abundance, which is what I talk about all the time. You literally just moved your mindset from scarcity to abundance by moving transfers, by transferring every single day. That day you started off with a cup of coffee, you moved your money. Imagine we throw the gym on top of that too, another compound effect, by the way. We do the compound effect of moving money. We went to the gym, we got a cup of coffee, we feel great. Now what does your day look like? Do you think that would have an effect on your finances over time? See, if you just put a little bit aside every single day, that's the thing. It's like, well, Eric, I can only put $30 aside. I don't care. Put $30. You'll watch what happens when you look over and go, holy moly. And then what will happen, it will start having a compound effect. You'll start getting traction. And when you start getting traction, all of a sudden you'll look over there and there's $6,000 there. And then you're like, woo, this is fun. And then you start putting more money there. Then it's 10,000, 12,000, 15,000, 100,000. And this is how we get there. And we don't get there by turning off and being in scarcity mindset and ignoring the numbers. The numbers are going to be the numbers. But, you know, and I always tell the story of the client that spent $193,000 a month. Don't listen to this podcast and tell yourself, hey, listen, starting next month or once I get out of COVID or once I make more money or at the end of the year or once I pay my tax bill. It's never going to happen if you do it that way. It's not going to happen. So what you do is you make daily, and I'm telling you, I want you to listen to me on this energy. Look, you don't want that Linus cloud hanging over you all day long. You don't want to feel that negative energy all day long. You want to basically be able to control your mental state. And by making those transfers, you control your mental state, you control your mental energy, you control the way you feel. You walk in smiling, you walk in feeling better, and then you walk in compelled to make money, but you walk it with the right way. By the way, you're more likely to make the best decision for the patient because you don't need the money. I mean, I firmly believe in ethics, and we got to make sure we take care of people the way they deserve to be taken care of. And so what ends up happening is then we start becoming more valuable to the marketplace. We start actually creating a better experience. We start having higher referrals. You can start to see how this compound effect starts to happen. You're less stressed out. Maybe you spend more time with your wife or husband. Boom, 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 boom. I had a doctor tell me recently when, she said, basically, Eric, I followed your system. And because of that, when COVID happened, I had plenty of money set aside. And it was just a daily transfer. It was a daily move. And I did it every single day. And because I did that, now I look over and I've got plenty of money. And I'm like, man, this is great. Exactly. That's the point I'm trying to make here. And so what I encourage you to do is a few things as I wrap up this podcast. So a few thoughts. One, get the help. Like the worst thing you could possibly do. Look, you want to grow your business and financial acumen. By the way, you know who the people that will listen to this and get help? It's interesting. This is true. I want you to hear me on this. The people who will reach out and get help are the most successful, not the least successful. Isn't that interesting? It'll be interesting. I'll get phone calls like after this podcast, and you know who they will all be from? People that are already wealthy. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting how that happens? The people that are not wealthy or struggling, they won't call. They didn't call before. They turned down the meeting from the financial advisor. They turned down the meeting from everybody. Because that's scarcity mindset. Eric, if I call Eric, he might try to sell me something. That's that scarcity mindset. Look, if you need help, and it doesn't matter if it's me. I mean, this podcast is free. Do what you want with it. But I want you to know that, like, if you need help, you need help. Go get help. Like, go say, hey, look, I was talking to someone recently. I said, we're talking about a marriage. And I said, men are kind of silly in the way we sometimes don't want to just admit, like if a male sometimes, and as a male, I can say this clearly, is like most men, and I've been in the financial industry for a long time, are scared to look over at their spouse and say, look, I messed this up. I messed up. But it's okay to admit that. But then that way, by admitting that, you actually become, I think, more masculine, not less, because you're admitting, right? Being vulnerable is hard, by the way. Being vulnerable is hard. Being a closed down ass is easy. That's easy, right? Anybody can do that, right? I've got, my 6-year-old can do that. But being vulnerable and admitting where we have struggles, that takes courage. That actually is difficult. So if you look at this and say, look, I've messed up or I'm not where I want to be, the first thing is just admitting, hey, I'm not where I want to be. The second is getting help. And then third, hey, maybe you say, Eric, I got enough knowledge, then start making the transfers daily. Make a daily discipline. Create an Excel spreadsheet and sit down and start writing my assets and liabilities. And don't skip them. Don't be like, well, my house doesn't count. Your house counts, I promise you. Right? I get your house paid off, I guarantee you life changes. I always tell people, because there's financial advisors that'll tell people don't pay off their house. By the way, if a financial advisor ever tells you don't pay off your house, don't walk, run. Because that person really doesn't understand wealth, and they're not really there for you. They're there for their commission. I promise you. Trust me on this one. Now, if you pay off your house, let me tell you, I've never had anybody in the history of all the houses I've paid off, and I've paid off a whole lot, I've never had somebody come back to me and say, man, I wish I didn't pay off my house. I really missed out in the market. Like, that's never happened one time. You know what happens when someone pays off their home? They walk in skipping. They walk in, they're like, oh, I love my life. I've got no house payment. Life's good. I don't really stress out. It doesn't matter if COVID or anything else happens. I'm going to be on the boat, right? I mean, what ends up happening is like, there's power in this. There's power in this. So what we do is we just, like, it's okay. If you're not where you want to be, it's okay. Just admit, hey, I'm not where I want to be right now. Make some transfers, get an Excel spreadsheet, put your house on there, credit cards, car payment, whatever you got on there. It's okay. Don't hide stuff. You're hiding from yourself. That doesn't even make sense, right? I mean, you can't lie to yourself. I guess you could lie to yourself, but you won't get far. Put all that on there and then look at it every day and just start making incremental movements. Look, every single day. Don't worry about, Eric, I feel like it's going to take forever to get there. It won't. It won't take forever to get there. I promise you. You'll start to see the compound effect take place. You'd be surprised. You'll start accumulating money. You'll start to improve your health. You'll start to improve your performance, improve your case acceptance, improve a lot of things. There's a compound effect here. Is it easiest starting with $5 a day? Yes. Where else would you start but $5 a day? Whatever that is, whatever that amount is, just start doing it. And it's the same way that credit card companies make $1 gazillion because they just charge you interest incrementally every single day. And it's a little bit of interest every single day. And they charge everyone a little bit of interest every single day. And then boom, right? Then they've got billions to lend, which they make more interest off of, right? So make that your own financial plan. Make sure that that's your own way to do things. And whether you're a dentist or not, look, I'm thankful. I get a lot of responses on the Dental Wealth podcast by people who are not dentists. And look, I'm glad to have you too. And while this is, catered towards a niche audience, it's really for everybody. I think, it doesn't matter what you do. You can hear this message and say, I need this too. So, thank you for being here. I mean, I'm telling you, this is not Eric's philosophy that I just think is a good sounding philosophy. This is case study. This is decades of watching what people do well and what they don't do well. And I'm telling you the secret to getting there. I'm telling you exactly how to get there. So, if you know, maybe, I would take, no matter who you are, you need to put some of this in place. But if you're somebody who maybe, doing well, but you have a friend or a family member or whatever who's not doing well. I feel like sometimes baby boomers are the ones that struggle the most because of the fact that they kind of came out from their parents of the Great Depression and being so conservative. They were the charge it, generation. So look, maybe send it to a parent. Maybe send this message to, it's not too late. It doesn't matter if you're 71 years old. It's never too late. Look, send this to someone you care about. Send it to a colleague. Send it to a parent. Send it to a friend. This is information you can help. You, by the way, when you send it to somebody else, you'll start talking about this podcast. When you start talking about this podcast, you get to hear it again. That's the greatest part of teaching is that you get to hear it again. So share it. Talk about it. Talk about this concept. If you need some help on this or say, hey, look, Eric, I'd love to have some more complex understanding of this, reach out to the Capital Investment Advisory Services at Tower Leadership. We'll be more than happy to walk you through how to create your own plan for yourself. Like this, comment, share. We really appreciate all the feedback we're getting. I see the spikes. We can go back and see the numbers on how many people are listening. It's just unbelievable to watch the following increase every single week. So, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this. Make sure you subscribe so that you can get updates of when the new podcasts come out. So that you can stay informed and stay in the loop and push your financial education so that you can have the life that you deserve. Guys, thanks for watching and listening this week, and we'll see you next time.